Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. I had some camera problems today, so I'm using a backup camera. I hope it works okay. Today's video is going to continue along the Columbo detective television series, which was part of the NBC mystery series, part of their magic whirlwind of a wheel. It was a wheel of murder mystery type shows involving McLeod, McMillan and Wife, which was Rock Hudson, and then Columbo. So it was those three. And it was very successful. And that put less pressure on the actors to have a weekly television series. They would only have to produce a show once every 3 weeks. So what I wanted to focus on is this whole concept of magic or illusion, or if magic and illusion are synonymous. I'm here to say that yes, they are. But let me just read to you the definition of the word magic, because Hollywood is all about magic. Magic is defined as the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. That's one definition of the word magic as a noun. As an adjective, magic can mean used in magic or working by magic, having or apparently having supernatural powers as an adjective. Another adjective for magic can be wonderful and exciting. As a verb, you can use magic as a move or change, to create, as if by magic. That's an action verb. All right, but I happen to think that illusion has a lot to do with magic, and the key difference there is illusion is an image that deceives your mind by producing a false impression of reality. Look no farther than the coronavirus, which they had to upgrade to the COVID-19, which I believe COVID is an acronym, and I believe it stands for Certification of Identity. Yeah, vaccination. COVID. Certification of vaccination identification. I think that's what that means, because it definitely doesn't mean influenza or the flu, although that appears to be how the numbers work out, is just code everything to COVID, because we've cured the flu. No one gets the flu anymore. And just got the word on the fake news today that all the heart attacks that have been happening for the last 2 years, it's all part of COVID. Yeah. That's why we have 1 million heart attacks now in the last 6 months, higher than usual. Heart attack is the leading cause of death in the United States, always has been, but typically it's people over 90 years old. So it now involves teenagers. So they have upgraded the heart attacks, and they're saying it's, I guess, if you're not vaccinated, you can get a heart attack. My personal experience is if you are vaxxed, you will be suffering heart-related issues. Like I said, I had 4 funerals in 2022, all 4 vaccinated people. I attended 2 of the 4. Couldn't attend all of them. And I have a whole host of people that didn't die but have issues with their heart, high heart rate. And their medical doctors are completely and utterly worthless, but they are being paid. The key difference here with the word illusion is that it's a mental, psychological operation. So in other words, if you believe it's true, then it's true, even if it's false. It doesn't matter what the truth is, as Henry Kissinger said. It doesn't matter if a crisis is real or promulgated. In other words, the government or the television tells you through your cell phone what to believe in. That's Henry Kissinger telling you that if a crisis is promulgated by the state, it's just the same as if it was real or organic. Henry Kissinger, who's a worthless eater, over 100 years old. All right, magic is defined as the art of producing illusions as entertainment by the use of devices. Yes, tools, the tools of the trade. Many times, magic and illusion are considered to be the same thing. Well, I always consider them to be the same thing. And I did go see the Siegfried and Roy act at the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas. I didn't pay for the ticket. I was comped on it. And they have a special stage where they can make rabbits appear out of the hat. Only there they use lions and tigers, which are elevated on elevators. But they use Michael Jackson music and a lot of lighting to obscure your view. Avert your eyes. Avert your eyes. That's the purpose of a beautiful assistant, right? Anyway, the NBC mystery movie series was an umbrella title for one of many mystery series which were known on a rotating basis, which was known as the Wheel series. It started out in 1971 with Columbo, Macmillan and Wife, and McCloud, which was Dennis Weaver. It morphed into having a Wheel series on Wednesday nights, which included Banachek and some other TV shows I never really watched. Quincy, was created after the celebration for Thomas Noguchi, who was involved in the autopsy of Sharon Tate, Marilyn Monroe, Natalie Wood, Inger Stevens, Thomas Albert Decker, Jack Cassidy, who appeared in 3 Columbos. Anyway, I'm not going to get into Thomas Noguchi. That's another treasure trove, is Thomas Noguchi, and the control that he was under. The CIA was all over Thomas Noguchi. He was functioning in a very high pressure environment. That doesn't really reveal itself in the television portrayal known as Quincy Medical Examiner. You don't get the feeling that the CIA is all over the medical examiner's office, but they are. I can assure you of that, especially if it involves a clandestine service murder. Getting back to Columbo, what I wanted to tell you is that I used Columbo as a metaphor. Yes, it was my favorite police detective series on television. It's really a how to catch 'em format juxtaposition. It's not a whodunit. Columbo tells you who does it in Act 1. They give you the motive, the means, and the methods of the murder. And the rest of the film is about a tutorial of how the clandestine services creates alibis, creates fake witnesses, creates scapegoats. There's always a scapegoat in all the Columbos. There's always an ironclad alibi. There's always a highly intelligent murderer. And then there's this completely unrealistic police officer who's dressed like an unmade bed, to coin a phrase from Suzanne Plachette. And then he goes on to ignore the scapegoat and focus in on the actual killer. This would never happen in real life, people. That's why I liked it, because I knew it was a complete escape. That's what my mother used to call it. It was an escape. Escape from reality. Because there is no Columbo in real life. There is no Perry Mason in real life. There is no criminal justice system in real life. There's only maritime law, and there is only authoritative law. There is martial law. You don't have any rights. There are privileges. There are privileged classes. And I think we've learned, if you watch my channel, that clandestine service murders are generally unsolved. And if there is a conviction of someone, it's a scapegoat. They never arrest, arraign, and let alone convict the real murderers. Ever. Not in a clandestine crime. That breaks the whole rules. Now, the clandestine services does oftentimes murder the murderer on their own, but they don't rely on the sheriff's department or the police department or a district attorney's office to do that. They handle their own issues within the unit, so to speak. All right. Now, the concept of Columbo was born out of borrowing and stealing other people's ideas. Just like the music business, just like the Beatles, just like Neil Young, just like the Mamas and the Papas, just like the Monkees, just like the Rolling Stones. You will find Elvis Presley didn't write his music, okay? And he sang other people's music. He covered other people's songs. In the case of the Beatles, it looks like they covered other people's songs to a great extent. I know there's a perception that they wrote most of their music. I think that's a false perception. because they would be the only successful musical act to ever have done that, because it's never happened before and it's never happened since. So, even Amy Winehouse wrote a few songs and she was great, but she covered other people's music, in much the way that Elvis Presley did. So, and Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Bing Crosby. Okay, so I'm not putting anyone down for singing other people's music, but you have to realize that's a little bit of a magic trick, that if you believe that Frank Sinatra wrote all the lyrics to all the music, then you've been punked. You've been punked. And that's true with Columbo too, because other people were doing this format beforehand. And Hollywood is famous, CIA Hollywood, clandestine service Hollywood, is famous for black magic, where they actually commit crimes and they telegraph the crime, sometimes in advance of the crime, or sometimes to celebrate the crime after the fact, to show you how smart the clandestine services are. They will do a documentary or a Oliver Stone type movie to go back in time of something that's already occurred, to tell you what happened, right? But it won't be truthful. It will be false, and hopefully it'll be entertaining, right? But they like to use applied linguistics a lot. So, to give you an example, before I take off on these Columbos, there were 69 Columbo episodes, and they typically ran 90 minutes. The first one, Prescription Murder, ran, I believe, 2 hours. And that was actually aired in 1968. It's before the Sharon Tate murder. The next one, Ransom for a Dead Man, that didn't air until 1971, which would be after the Sharon Tate murder. So that's important because Sharon Tate was murdered in Benedict Canyon. Benedict Canyon is a military housing development for spooks, for people that are directors, writers, producers, and actors for Hollywood can live in Bel Air, Holmby Hills, Benedict Canyon, Angelo Drive, Cielo Drive, Summit Ridge Drive, Beverly Grove Drive, and cul-de-sacs off of those streets that I just gave you. Cul-de-sacs. In other words, cul-de-sacs that have the exact same name. For example, Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched, the Samantha Stevens, the Good Witch, she lived on Benedict Canyon Drive, cul-de-sac, off Benedict Canyon Drive, the drive. Okay, Sharon Tate was murdered at 10050 Cielo Drive, which is Bella Drive, which is off Cielo Drive. In other words, it's not Cielo Drive, but it's called Cielo Drive. It's really off Sunbrook Drive, but God help you, they don't want to call it that, because then you'd find the crime scene without any assistance. Anyway, and that's off Angelo Drive, which is off the street where Peter Falk lived, and Jack Benny, and Lucille Ball, and Agnes Moorehead, who also starred with Elizabeth Montgomery in Bewitched. Right, and they also starred with David White. David White played the boss of Darren Stevens, Larry Tate, who was a partner in the advertising company that Darren Stevens worked for. And Larry Tate's actor's name is David White, and he stands 6'2", and he appeared in Identity Crisis with Columbo and Patrick McGowan in 1975, and he played the CIA director, Agent X9, Philip Corrigan. And that's important because David White's son, Jonathan, was later killed at age 33 in the Lockerbie Pan Am Flight 103 explosion, Lockerbie flight over Scotland on December 21st, 1988. David White's son was murdered at age 33. He joins Art Linklater because Art Linklater had his son in law, Jonathan Zweier, another Jonathan. Do you see some similarities here? Art Linklater, who lived at 11 Bel Air Road, across the street from Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa lived at 1001 Bel Air Road, and Julio Iglesias lived above Zsa Zsa Gabor on a cul-de-sac off Bel Air Road, which was called Bel Air Road, but it wasn't on Bel Air Road. Bel Air Road, not on Bel Air Road. Julio Iglesias. All right, so Agnes Moorehead was in Bewitched. She played a witch, right? She also played the very first victim of a Columbo play in San Francisco, where Joseph Cotton was the murderer and Agnes Moorehead, the witch, was the victim. The first murder victim of a Columbo was in San Francisco at the Orpheum Theater. Agnes Moorehead, who then was required to attend the phony, fake wedding reception at the Playboy Mansion, in Playboy Club in London, England, near the Grand Sheraton Hotel near Green Park. And there she was on January 20th, 1968, Agnes Moorehead, required to attend the fake wedding reception, 2-hour cocktail party for Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, who shares the same last name as Larry Tate from Bewitched. Remember, David White played Larry Tate, who has the same last name as Colonel Paul Tate, Sharon Tate's father. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's an accident at all. The Bewitched series had begun prior to Sharon Tate's death, and it continued past her death into up to 1974. And when Larry Tate, aka David White, stopped working for Bewitched, he then starred in Columbo's episode Identity Crisis with Patrick McGoohan as director and starred as the murderer. And there's Larry Tate going by the name of Philip Corrigan, Agent X9. But you should know at that time, William Egan Colby was the CI director in 1975 when David White, the Larry Tate character, is playing the CI director, Philip Corrigan. The actual CI director is William Colby, and I guarantee you that William Colby knew who killed Sharon Tate. I guarantee you. He knows everything that goes on in Benedict Canyon as the director of CIA. Prior to that, he was in charge of Operation Phoenix, and he knows about 26,000 Vietnamese that were murdered there. And before that, he was in Operation Gladio in Rome, Italy, outside the Bank of Vatican and the Holy See. And he knew all the people that were murdered and exploded and bombed up and arson killed in Italy and through the NATO forces throughout Western Europe. So I guarantee you that William Colby knows who was killed in the My Lai massacre, mini murder in Benedict Canyon and with Lino LaBianca. He probably personally knew Lino LaBianca, since Lino LaBianca was a military policeman in World War II when William Colby was in Switzerland and London and Germany, where Lino LaBianca was in all those places. Lino LaBianca was in all those places, as was the director of CIA that David White portrayed in Identity Crisis, the television episode 1975 that Patrick McGoohan directed. Patrick McGoohan starred in 4 Columbos, and he directed one. So, and he directed one that he did not appear in. So he directed, I guess, 2 Columbos, but he appeared as an actor in 4. And so I'm going to put Patrick McGoohan as the number 1 actor who participated in Columbo. Number 2 is without a doubt is Robert Culp. And Robert Culp, he appeared, I believe, in 4. Robert Culp comes, and here's what I want to tell you, just so you don't think I'm anti-Semitic or anything. Patrick McGoohan is not Jewish. Robert Culp is Irish. He's not Jewish. Jack Cassidy, who married Shirley Jones, he's not Jewish. Okay, but virtually every other person that's associated with Columbo is Jewish. The executive producer is Philip Saltzman. He's Jewish. The 2 creators, Richard Levinson and William Link, they're Jewish. Okay? The director of Prescription Murder is Richard Irving. He's Jewish. His real name is Irving Israel. Peter Falk himself, who portrays an Italian, he's Jewish. Okay? Then the president of NBC, they only have Jewish CEOs. Let me give you the list of names of the presidents of NBC who produced and distributed Columbo. Okay, it was created when Julian Goodman took over from Robert Kintner. Robert Kintner brought you the Huntley-Brinkley report and the 1960s presidential election coverage so that CBS didn't just dominate the networks with their Walter Cronkite. But it was Julian Goodman that took over in 1966, and that's when they brought you Prescription Murder. Julian Goodman promoted the Chet Huntley and David Brinkley Hour. He also signed Johnny Carson to a $1 million retainer deal to host The Tonight Show. And that is when Prescription Murder came out, and then that is when we had Ransom for a Dead Man, which featured let me come back to that. But anyway, Julian Goodman was the president until 1974 when Herbert Schlosser took over. He's Jewish. Then he was replaced in 1978 by Fred Silverman. He's Jewish, right? And after him, we had Branton Tartikoff in 1981 through 1991, the 10 years. He's Jewish. So how many Jewish presidents of NBC did I just tell you about? Kintner, Goodman, Schlosser, Silverman, Tartikoff. That's 5. Okay, that completely covers the NBC relationship with Columbo. He went over to ABC Disney after that. He was always under Jewish management, supervision, and control. The writers, the directors, the executive producers, the creators, and most of the actors that appear in your Columbos are Jewish. All right, let me move on because I'm telling you that Jack Cassidy appeared in 3 Columbos and he was not Jewish. However, he did die in close proximity to filming his last Columbo episode, which was entitled Now You See Him, which celebrated the great Santini and the Cabaret of Magic, which is really called the Magic Castle at 7001 Franklin Avenue in West Hollywood, 1/2 block from the Dolby Theater where the Academy Awards, a specifically built theater for the Academy Awards, so that you can see bitch slap magic with Will Smith and Chris Rock, which that never happened because it's in a magic trick theater across the street from the Magic Castle, which was celebrated by Jack Cassidy. That was aired on March 4th. Scratch that. Now You See Him was released on February 29th, 1976. Again, celebrating magic in West Hollywood at the Magic Castle, which they renamed the Cabaret of Magic, featuring the great Santini. However, what I want to tell you is Jack Cassidy himself was murdered on December 12th, 1976, just 10 months after his last Columbo, his 3rd Columbo, aired. Jack Cassidy was burned to a crisp at 1211 La Cienega Avenue, which is walking distance from the Magic Castle, and it's also in very close proximity to where Diane Linkletter was murdered back on October 4th, 1969, just 2 months after Sharon Tate was murdered. And Jack Cassidy was burned beyond recognition. They had to use his teeth, dental records, and a signet ring. And the cover story was that he fell asleep on his Naugahyde leather couch with his cigarette, and it incinerated him, but didn't burn up his next door neighbors in this apartment building where he had downsized after divorcing Shirley Jones. But I'm here to tell you they didn't find his body on the couch. His body was like he's trying to escape through the front door, and he had to have had chemicals put all over his body to incinerate him like that. So Jack Cassidy was murdered, all right? And in his second Columbo, the three that he did was, the first one was Murder by the Book, which was directed by a Jewish director by the name of Steven Spielberg. And he killed his partner, Martin Milner, who's also Jewish, by the way. So you've got a Jewish director and you got a Jewish actor in Martin Milner, and then you have partner killing a partner, a fake author killing the real writer, Martin Milner. The second Jack Cassidy appearance was called Publish or Perish. And in that movie, Jack Cassidy, of course, is the murderer, and he creates a scapegoat that's trying to remember the name of the scapegoat character. All right. Where's Publish or Perish? Eddie Kane is played by John Chandler. And the John Chandler Eddie Kane scapegoat is killed by an incendiary device bomb where Eddie Kane is burned beyond recognition. That was released on January 13th, 1974. What I'm trying to tell you is literally 2 years and 11 months later, that's exactly how Jack Cassidy was murdered, in the way that Eddie Kane was murdered in Publish or Perish, which was Columbo episode number 5. Out of the 69 Columbos, this was number 5. And they had a scene where you were led to believe that Eddie Kane, who didn't murder anyone, was that he was the one that was burned to a crisp. And that's what happened to Jack Cassidy. And so this is an example of Hollywood telegraphing their move. They're telling you that our star of the show, Publish or Perish, Jack Cassidy, he's going to be burned to a crisp in the same way that Eddie Kane was. In Murder by the Book, let me go back and just real quick, like Bunny Rabbit here, tell you that in the first Columbo Out of the Gate series, we had Prescription Murder. This is where the husband kills the wife. And he's a medical doctor psychiatrist, and he lives in a high-rise apartment building on Wilshire Boulevard. Anyway, he wants to kill his wife, so he restructures the mind of this Hollywood actress that he's seen for psychology treatments, and he gets her to establish his alibi and to pretend to be his wife, to construct a false alibi. This is the CIA telling you the importance of psychiatrists and psychologists. And that's important because psychologists were involved in the murder of Abigail Folger. She was seeing Martin Flicker in Hollywood, in Beverly Hills, the 5 days in a row before she died. And you know those sessions were all recorded and supervised. Martin Flicker. And you should know that in Beverly Hills there never would have been a trial involving Lyle and Eric Menendez were it not for Jerome Oziel, a psychologist in Beverly Hills that lives close to where Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood used to live. He lives literally 1 block away. And he was seeing Eric Menendez not for anything to do with his parents. He was seeing him because it was a requirement from the court, because Eric was arrested at age 17 for burglarizing homes in Calabasas, where he lived. He did not live in Beverly Hills. He lived in Calabasas. And the whole notion that he would see a psychologist in Beverly Hills is a red flag. There's something wrong with that, because he should see a psychologist like his mother's seen in Westlake Village, which is a lot closer drive to Calabasas, where he lives, and he attends Calabasas High School. Why would a 17-year-old boy who's attending Calabasas High School have to drive 40 minutes in traffic to go see Jerome Oziel in Beverly Hills? But anyway, that's what happened. And it was Oziel's, one of his nutcases psychiatry patients, who he's having an affair with, who later went to the Beverly Hills Police Department and said that Oziel said that Eric said that he killed his parents. It's like very third hand. And otherwise, if it wasn't for that, then Eric and Lyle Menendez would never have been arrested or charged with the murder of their parents, because there's no murder weapon. There's no evidence that proves them that they were involved. They had no financial motive. They had no means. They had no method. Jose Menendez is in the porn business. His employers are Jewish. His employers had over $15 million of life insurance on him. Mario Casar and Andrew Vajna, whose real name is Andres Weidman, and Noel Bloom, who is the #1 producer of porn for the world and for the United States. And he had an unhappy relationship with Jose Menendez. However, Jose Menendez was the chairman of the board and CEO of Live Entertainment. All that operation of porn has been rolled up into Lionsgate, if you're familiar with Lionsgate. I think Sony owns them. Anyway, you should know that Hollywood owns the porn business, but they do it through a series of straw companies, so it doesn't look like your favorite child's television show is in the hardcore porn business. But they are. So prescription murder is where the husband kills the wife, and we introduce the concept of MK Ultraing the scapegoat who the doctor uses to kill his wife. Then the second Columbo, which is a couple years later, in 1971, we have Ransom for a Dead Man, where the wife kills the husband. So we reverse the idea, and it's the wife is killing the husband. And that is important because Lee Grant stars. She's a Jewish girl from New York. Lee Grant is an attorney, and she murders her much older husband, who is also an attorney at the same law firm, because she wants to gain access to the financial control that he exerted over her. So it's a younger wife killing the older husband. All right, pretty simple, right? The third Columbo is Murder by the Book with Jack Cassidy. That's the third Columbo, and there's Jack Cassidy right there. And that is where a business partner kills his business partner. You have the promotional sales person, Jack Cassidy, whose name is Ken Franklin, named after Franklin Avenue, which has the Magic Castle, right? So Ken Franklin murders the Martin Milner character, who's known as Jim Ferris, and because Martin Milner wants to go his own way. He wants to publish, since he's doing all the writings of the Mrs. Melville murder series. The Mrs. Melville then is made into Murder by the Book with Angela Lansbury, a British actress. But at this time, which is 1971, September 15th, 1971, the Martin Milner character is murdered by the Ken Franklin Jack Cassidy character for the life insurance because he has no capability of writing his own mystery novels. So the Mrs. Melville series came to a screeching halt. Death Lends a Hand, we introduce Robert Colt as Carl Brimmer. He is the president of a surveillance spook business that subcontracts to corporations and government entities and the police department. And we have a very young woman. She's having affairs on a much older man who's played, of course, by, I'm trying to think who played him, Dial M for Murder. And he's appeared in several Columbos. Ray Milland plays the older husband to a much younger wife. Anyway, the Ray Milland character hires the Carl Bremer character to spy on his wife to see if she's having an affair. Of course, he finds out, yes, she's having an affair with the golf pro at the country club. So, but instead of telling her husband, like he's being paid to do, he prefers to blackmail the husband by telling his wife that he won't tell on her and will keep it a secret, and just feed me some intel information because your husband is in the media newspaper business. But unfortunately, the Lenore Kennicott character, played by Patricia Crowley, she disagrees and confronts Carl Bremer, and he hits her with the back of his hand, which has a diamond ring, and conks her out, kills her. The next Columbo, the fifth Columbo, is Dead Weight, which has another Jewish actress played by Suzanne Plachette, and Eddie Albert, who's the United States Marine General. He's Jewish also, in case you didn't know. So you got the eyewitness, the material eyewitness is Suzanne Plachette, who is Jewish, and then the murderer, Eddie Arnold, he's Eddie Albert, he's Jewish, and he kills his procurement officer in the U.S. Marines because they have a scam going where they're overbilling the military for weapons. So the basic started out as husband kills the wife kills the husband, fake author kills the real writer for the murder books. Then we have a Marine Corps general killing a colonel in the Marines who's a procurement officer, his partner in crime, who is being investigated and wants to quit and flee. We have Death Lends a Hand, which is again CI surveillance, where nobody trusts each other, okay? The husband doesn't trust the wife. The surveillance people don't trust each other. And you have Columbo is showcasing all of these CIA methods and techniques of surveillance and creating scapegoats. Dead weight, they throw, Eddie Albert throws the body of the victim into the ocean. This is exactly 10 years before Natalie Wood was thrown into the ocean at Catalina Island like a bag of potatoes. That's 10 years in advance. Then an identity crisis with Patrick McGowan. We have Nelson Brenner, who's the West Coast senior deputy chief of the West Coast CIA. He murders A.J. Henderson, known as Geronimo. The code name for Nelson Brenner is Steinmetz. And he conks him over the head with a tire iron underneath the Santa Monica Pier, which is walking distance to where William Holden, who came out of the Pasadena Playhouse, and he's a big movie star, and he's living in a high-rise apartment complex walking distance from this pier. This is 5 years. No, scratch that. 6 years. It's almost 6 years to the day when William Holden is conked on the head with a tire iron or a baseball bat in around November 18th, 1981. And again, the television episode Identity Crisis came out in November 1975. So that's 6 years before, it's almost exactly 6 years to the day before. We don't know the exact date that William Holden was conked on the head because his body wasn't found for 2 or 3 or 4 days. So he might have died on the 18th. He might have died on Friday, which I think was the 16th. Or maybe he died on Thursday night, the 15th. We don't really know. But what we know is that his Columbo episode where a guy got conked on the head in Santa Monica happened exactly 6 years before William Holden got conked on the head. And Natalie Wood got thrown into the ocean exactly the way portrayed in Dead Weight 10 years before she was murdered, which was 6 years, which is also 10 years after, William Holden and Natalie Wood, they died within 2 weeks of each other in 1981. Okay? Natalie Wood died a month after William Holden. He died around November 18th, 1981, and Natalie Wood was thrown into the water after Christmas. No, scratch that. After Thanksgiving. So she died, a week after William Holden. She died on the 26th of November, 1981, and we're not sure, but we're going to say that William Holden died on the 18th, and Natalie Wood died on the 26th. So, it's 8 days difference, a week difference, something like that. Anyway, I'm just giving you these disturbing facts. It's also disturbing that Art Linklater, who lives in Bel Air on Bel Air Road, above the Sharon Tate murder scene, that he had a son-in-law, John Zwire, killed with a .38 caliber pistol in the back of the head at age 33, and that Jonathan White, David White's son, was killed in the Lockerbie crash on December 21st, 1988, at age 33. And then Aaron Valente is murdered at the KKR. Last place you've seen alive was for a Jewish private bank called Jerome Kohlberg's KKR with Henry Kravis. and George Roberts. And there she is on October 7th, 2019, age 33. And she's found 5 days later dead as a doornail in the back of a rent-a-car 16 miles south of Sand Hill Road and Kleiner Perkins, KKR, and Sequoia Capital. And that's 3 people who are 33 years old. It is more than bizarre. And Jack Cassidy is featured in 3 Columbos, one of which discusses the incineration of the scapegoat. And then Jack Cassidy himself, 2 years later, is incinerated, and they need a dental identification to verify his corpse. You should know that back in 1939, on September 8th, 1939, Charlie Chan at Treasure Island was rolled out. And they featured Sidney Toler, who played Charlie Chan, and Cesar Romero, who played Fred Randini, who's a magician, kind of like the great Santini. He's an illusionist. He also masquerades as a psychologist or a magic soothsayer. That he can do seances and he can read minds, and I'm not sure what you'd call that, but a mind reader. And he calls himself the Zodiac, and he targets wealthy people in San Francisco, which would be Presidio Heights area, for example. And then I'm here to tell you that 30 years and 33 days after that release of Charlie Chan at Treasure Island, 30 years and 33 days later, Paul Stein, age 29, is shot in the side of his head with a 9mm pistol at the corner of Cherry Street and Washington Street in Presidio Heights, walking distance to Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi's home, and walking distance to Sharon Tate's father's home in the Presidio officer housing. And talk about telegraphing your move. They're telling you there's a Zodiac killer loose in San Francisco that's murdering people in expensive neighborhoods like the Presidio Heights neighborhood. And then it happens 30 years and 33 days later. And I have 3 dead people who are 33 years old: John Zweier, Jonathan White, and Aaron Valente. That 33 comes up a lot. And Larry Tate was played by David White, and his son gets killed at 33. And he has the same last name as Sharon Tate. And he appears in that Columbo, landing the helicopter on the what is referred to as the majestic hillside, which is owned by the Paul Allen Land Trust. It's 120 acres of land. And there's the Larry Tate character who's playing William Colby, the CI director, and he's landing above the Sharon Tate murder scene. And he used to use the name Larry Tate, the boss of Darren Stevens, and Elizabeth Montgomery lives down the hill from Sharon Tate's murder, and Agnes Moorehead, who plays in Dora Mother-in-Law, she lives walking distance from the Sharon Tate murder scene also. So you have the Bewitched. You have David White, Elizabeth Montgomery, and Agnes Moorehead, and Peter Falk. Okay, all 4 of those people appear in Benedict Canyon. They either live there or they appear. Well, Peter Falk lives there, Elizabeth Montgomery lives there, Agnes Moorehead lives there, and David White didn't live there, but he appeared in that, and Patrick McGowan didn't live there. But David White lived in West Hollywood. And but 3 of the 4, there they are. All right, that's enough for today. It just, there's so much more, with 69 episodes of Columbo. I just wanted to give you a taste that Hollywood does this deliberately on purpose, where they want you to know what they're going to do in the future or what they've already done, and they want to re-emphasize how smart they are, and subliminally let you know that they're in charge of the magic of Hollywood. What I would call black magic. Murder most foul. Thanks for listening. Please hit the like and subscribe. Have a great evening.